Good day, and welcome to the Songwriters Cafe. I'm lucky to be joined today by our friend Jason Gray. We're going to talk a little bit about his forthcoming album and just about the craft of songwriting. So, welcome, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here with you.
If you don't mind, I just would like to kind of jump right in to talk about you, talk about the album, and I do want to spend a nice chunk of time talking about songwriting
Yeah, yeah,
because that craft is something that's near and dear to us here.
yeah, absolutely.
But now I understand through some of my research that before we get started too far, that you've had some obstacles to overcome just as an artist and kind of getting to where you are right here. Not the least of which is the phone.
Not the phone. I know exactly right. Yeah. Yes, I have a speech impediment known as stuttering. There it is, right there. And which I'm grateful for the movie The King's Speech that came out this last year
Yeah.
because it kind of has helped people to understand what's going on. So I don't get the odd looks that I used to. But it, it, growing up, it was hard for me to understand how the Lord was going to, I was aware of this calling I had in my life, and but wasn't sure how He was going to accomplish that since I had this issue with my speech, and I used to think of it as this hindrance, this thing that was going to hold me back, a complication, and over the years have been grateful to discover it as a gift, in a lot of ways, because it gives me access to intimate places in people's hearts, because it buys me this opportunity everywhere I go when I'm doing a concert to talk to people about weakness and to assure people that I believe that God calls us not in spite of our weaknesses, but because of them. We are told that it's in our weakness that His strength is perfected. And we live in a world that celebrates strength and the survival of the fittest. And I get to be a walking, talking example of a different kingdom. Where He uses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. So.
That's excellent, and it makes me think about Paul's thorn, which I don't think any of
Yeah.
us know what in particular that was, but yours may be a little more apparent to some folks.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But I'd take that over some other options, I tell
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very bearable humiliation, that equips me to have a certain kind of conversation with my audience, and it's really defined a lot of what I do, in terms of a lot of my music kind of acknowledges brokenness and always circles this idea that the worst that we've known, the worst that happens, does not have the final say over our lives. Love has the final word. And so, sure, it's hard to order a pizza over the phone, but there are other compensations.
Well, let me ask, kind of on that front. As you're, because we're talking a little about songwriting, do you have to
Yeah.
do anything different in the way you write your songs lyrically or whatever, or is that an issue at all?
No, no. So my brand of speech impediment has a lot to do with my breathing. Like whatever you have in your brain that tells you when to breathe while you're speaking, I don't have that. If I concentrate really, really hard on my breathing when I take a breath, then I'm much more fluent and stuff. But the beauty with songs is that your breathing is kind of all scheduled in there because of the breath that you need to sing a certain line and stuff. So it automatically falls into place. So music has kind of become the Aaron to my Moses, you know, and it's this one avenue I have where I can communicate fluently, you know.
That's outstanding. That's a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's probably influenced the way I write in terms of um, yeah. I think our wounds and our hurts, our brokenness help make us sensitive to other people who are. I believe that it builds compassion in us. It can anyway, you know. And so I think every song I write, I'm aware of the person who may be hearing it, who is hurting and is maybe bitter or jaded, you know, who a happy song will hurt them and alienate them. You know what I mean? And so all of my songs, I feel like I feel compelled to acknowledge brokenness at some point before I draw them into hope. You know, my favorite author, Frederick Buechner, he talks about, you know, before you affirm the creeds, you know, you need to open up your daily newspaper and read the headlines and the worst of the hellishness that's happening in the world, you know, because it's only in that context that the hope of our creeds mean anything, you know. And it's after you read those headlines, if you still have the heart and the faith to make those bold pronouncements of hope, you know, that's when you have to do it and stuff. And so in my songwriting, I try to be conscientious of the person who's in their own personal hell and needs somebody to name the hell of that before they name the hope, you know.
Well, not to go down too much of a rabbit trail, but I think
Sure.
there's been a knock on Christian music, and I've felt it personally as I've listened
Yeah.
to Christian music, that it's all about all the wonderful things and
Yeah.
misses the boat on, you know, all of us who are walking broken in the world. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate, you know, when I'm listening to an album, I'm listening for something that I can connect to and not something that seems so far out of reach and that I'm not experiencing. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, like, I think a lot of us have felt that frustration, and a part of it had, you know, it's Christian music is a small market, you know, which means it's hard to find a big audience, which means it's hard to make a living.
Yeah.
And there is one avenue of support and exposure, and that is Christian radio. And so where things get a little tricky there is that the audience of people who typically tune in are oftentimes people who are driving on their way to work, or it can oftentimes be a demographic of people who are burnt out and harried, and they turn on the radio because they just want some bright spot, some encouraging word, you know. And I also think much of Western Christianity, we look to Christianity as an escape, you know, and we use Jesus as kind of like a genie in a bottle, or a rabbit's foot to kind of ward off unpleasantness, you know. And so when you are trying to write songs for that audience, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
You know, so how do you kind of honor their need for a moment of peace and positivity, but also honor the deeper aspects of the gospel, and it's a balancing act all the time.
I can only imagine in my stumbling in songwriting
Yeah.
that, yes. Well, along those lines, because I think it's I think it's the first single. Remind me who I am.
My speech handicap is contagious,
No,
but it'll
no.
go away. It'll
I'm
go away after a bit.
I'm actually literally tongue-tied. I
Sure.
actually have that. If you're familiar with that,
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
we can talk about that when we're done.
Sure, sure. Sounds good.
But at any rate, remind me who I am. So, as you're
Yeah.
putting that, and I know there's a little bit of a story behind that. Maybe you can
Yeah.
share that a little bit, just to show us kind of that the difficulty of writing the song in the context you've been discussing, but
Oh,
also
yeah.
the inspiration.
Sure. Yeah. I'll start with the inspiration. The song was born out of conversations wondering why we sin, because I was always raised to believe that we sin because of our willful rebelliousness, and that's true in part, I suppose, but the other truth is that most, if not all of us, I think we don't want to sin. I think we want to be good, so it's this thing that we do against our will almost. And so why do we do that? It begins to look like this addiction, this need, that drives us. And what is that? And so I began to wonder. In Genesis chapter 3, we're told that one of the first consequences of sin entering the world is that the ground would be cursed, and that we would eat by the sweat of our brow, and there would be weeds and thistles, and our efforts are frustrated, and it's this idea of futility, that no matter what we do, it never feels like it's enough, And I think that the curse for us is the feeling that we don't ever measure up, that no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I'm afraid I'm never enough, And I think all of us carry around that deep sense of inadequacy and a lack of worth, and that's what drives us into sin, I believe, because we begin to look for ways to escape that oppressive unworthiness, and we look for things that we hope will assure us of our worth, like materialism. If I have the newest, coolest things, then maybe that makes me new and cool. I don't know if new is the right word, but anyway. And it's why we escape into affairs and pornography, I believe, is this. I don't think it's about the naked bodies. I think it's about this this fantasy world where people can escape into and imagine themselves to be desirable and wanted with no risk of rejection, and then also workaholism. I think we work ourselves to the bone trying to prove our worth to ourselves and to the other people around us, and so all of these things we run to trying to hide from the curse, but they only make us feel more ashamed, more empty, more burnt out than we were before. And so if only we could learn to run to Christ, because He's the only one who can really tell us our worth. He paid for the right to do that, and if we recognize underneath our temptation is a desire to be assured of our worth, and we run to Jesus, who tells us that we are enough because He says so. He says, "See, I've carved your name on the palm of my hand," and He calls us His bride. He says He has the passion of a groom for His bride for us. He calls us the child that He chose to adopt into our family, and we are assured of our belovedness, And that's what I wanted to explore in the song, this idea that when I sin, it's because I need to be reminded who I am, which is kind of a beautiful thought too. I mean, like, I began to experience in my own life that when I'm tempted to sin, or even when I fall into sin, rather than going to shame, like I always have my whole life, my sin and my temptation has become an opportunity to be like, oh yeah, I did this because I forgot that
Yeah.
I'm beloved. And it becomes an occasion to be reminded of my belovedness. And that feels like the Lord, you know what I mean? That feels like the way that he works, you know? So, so that was the idea behind the song. And then it was like, okay, I think that this is a beautiful, important idea that I would like a lot of people to hear, which means how do we turn this into a 3.5 minute pop song that would work on radio, you know?
Right.
Um, so that was the way that we approached it. So it means a small amount of words, an economy of words, and hopefully a strong, simple idea for a chorus. And that was the way that we approached it, you know.
I think it's a fantastic song. I
Oh,
mean,
thank you.
I was fortunate to get an advance copy of most of the album, and
Oh, cool.
good stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Now, when does that release?
September 13th. Yeah,
Okay, so
just
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, yeah. So I'm proud of that song. Um, Even the way it turned out on the album, I feel like it's a song that I haven't heard before. You know, which is hard to achieve. You know, and I had told my producer, you know, like I'm this guy who plays acoustic guitar. So I said, dude, how about if we just completely abandon the acoustic guitar on this record and let's do something completely different, maybe more electronica kind of thing, you know? He goes, that's weird because on this album, I was going to tell you that you should really embrace the acoustic guitar, you know? So I was like, okay, that's it, you know. So it was his idea to kind of he created a loop with a kick, just hitting on the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a clap with it, the whole song, you know, which has kind of a Mumford and Sons
Yeah.
kind of a vibe to it, you know, and which was cool and fun to work on. But then I was afraid, you know, because everybody's into Mumford and Sons,
Yeah.
and I predict in the next year or two, everybody's albums are going to sound like Mumford and Sons. And so I was like, oh, dude, this is cool, but I don't want that, you know, and stuff. I said, how about if we go back to the idea of the electronica aspect? And that was when he added that awesome keyboard little thing that happens in the, you know, and it's this, in my mind, this cool combination of both organic, acoustic driven, and then also like a modern programmy, you know. So I love the fusion of all that. So
Yeah, the drums really jumped out at me.
yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it
just
is.
fun. Yeah.
It was actually a great, if I can share this, it was a great album to go running with because
Oh yeah, sure. Oh, that's good to know.
kept me moving along. Not that anybody listening cares about that, but it's all
Yeah.
about me, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, I think that's good. I like that.
I think we're running short on time, so
Okay.
and I want to respect your time. So let me just hit you with a couple of quick questions, if that's okay. Now, some artists, some songwriters I know will write hundreds of songs and throw
Yeah.
away 9/10 of them and then come up with an album. Other
Sure.
people, this would be me on the other side of the spectrum, write 2 songs a year and they ruin themselves over them. And
Yeah.
where do you fall on that spectrum?
I record almost every song that I write. There are a few leftovers and stuff, you know. But they'll probably be used on the next record, you know. But more the way that I write is I will write like 20 verses, just all kinds of verses, you know, and then go through and pick the 2 best verses, you know what I mean? So like rather than writing 100 songs, I write 100 versions of the same song, you know, and then so and then like even on my last record called Everything Sad is Coming Untrue, I was so captivated by that idea, everything sad coming untrue, that I wanted to have a song about that that was just right, you know. So I wrote one and it almost, you know, and then I wrote a completely different song with the same name and closer, and I wrote four completely different versions of the same song, and they all ended up on the special edition of that album and stuff. So I do that a lot too.
And you had to deal with some writer's block on that one, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I sure did. Yeah, yeah. The fear of, you know, a lot of that had to do with identity, which is what Remind Me Who I Am is all about. You know, my worth was so wrapped up in whether people liked my songs, you know, whether radio liked my songs, whether my artist friends would like my songs, whether my audience would like my songs, and all three of those audiences want something different, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was just stressed out, you know, and it actually broke when my wife told me. I don't know if you can. I hope you can use this, but she told me to go upstairs to my room where I write and just write a song with cussing in it, or a song about sex, something that I knew I couldn't use, you know, a
Right.
song that wouldn't be useful at all. And I understood what she meant by that, and I went upstairs, and the song goes like this. No, I'm kidding. I didn't have to do that kind of a song, but the song that I wrote was called "The Golden Boy and the Prodigal" off my last record.
Yeah.
And it was just a completely useless song because it didn't have a hooky chorus for radio. It had all these long verses. I didn't think anyone would be into it at all. It was just a song I wrote for myself. It turns out to be one of my most requested songs at my concerts. So
Yeah, you know, it's funny how a lot of songs that artists think are just throwaways
yeah,
become, you know, poor Bobby McFerrin and
yeah. Don't worry, be happy. Yeah,
that was a throwaway, and I think he regrets that to this day.
yeah, right. That's hard.
Well, we're past time. Let me hit you with one more question.
Okay.
One we try to kind of wrap up things with when we do All About Worship interviews is, if you weren't able to have music as a profession, if you could no longer continue with music, what would you foresee yourself doing?
I'd probably be like a counselor, you know. I would, I mean, even with my songs, I'm trying to get inside people's hearts and minds and hopefully help lead them to a place where I think they might find healing and hope and freedom, you know. Most of my songs, that's the goal of all of them, you know. So I would imagine, you know, I might want to be like a counselor if I didn't want to go to all the schooling of that. Maybe a chef. I love food, and food brings me a lot of joy and pleasure, you know, and I could imagine myself enjoying doing that, at least for a while. I think after a while I'd be like, no, I have to be a counselor.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, but
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today and here on the Songwriters Cafe, and
thank
I
you
wish
for
you the
having me.
best with the new album, and stay out of trouble.
All right, I'll do my best. You too. Thank you so much.